Five Nights at Freddy's, Ruin, the novelisation, audiobook. Demo 2. Based on the video game Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach Ruin, characters originally created by Scott Cawthorn. Story written and read by Joseph Chambers. I stood in something brown, squishy and full of insects. I decided several things in that moment. The first of which was that I would have to make an active effort not to care about how filthy me and my clothing got. I regretted to say that I'd put on my favourite white trainers, a treasured red jumper, a smart white polo, an expensive pair of blue denim shorts, and a pair of black leggings, all of which I would have preferred to not get damaged or stained. But I also knew that, quite understandably, I would be more upset if Gregory was in danger than my outfit. The second thing I decided was that I wouldn't analyse too closely what was staining the room. I didn't want to know what anything was. I was here to save my friend, and nothing else. The third was that I would try and breathe through my mouth as much as possible, as my rotting surroundings were not exactly being kind to my olfactory senses. My biggest hope was that I wouldn't be here long enough to throw up, or that if I was here for that long, I might get used to the smell. I tiptoed further and further into the room, and couldn't help but tut at a ripped and soiled sign that read, "Sorry for the mess, we'll be back soon." A part of me felt like taking a photo of this and uploading it to x.com under #BlatantLies. But then I brought myself back to reality and faced a grim truth. I would stand no chance of going any further without a torch. The path ahead was far too dark. In fact, since the electrics had all burnt out months ago, or possibly been cut off months before that, the only reason I was seeing the entrance hall so clearly was due to the fact of the chipboard having holes in it that let in some, but not much, daylight. Had I come at night, I would have been scuppered from the start. My mobile had an inbuilt torch, but that drained the battery something chronic, and I would have preferred to use an actual torch if at all possible. Thankfully, I saw some deactivated staff bots laying off to the side and made the choice to approach them gingerly in the hope that they may have torches on them, as I had a vague recollection from a previous visit, when the Pizzaplex had been open over a year ago, of seeing an unactive security bot in a cupboard ready to guard the place at night, complete with a torch. In some area of my mind, a voice was saying that they looked only asleep, and I had nearly convinced myself that there was no possible way for there to be any life in any of them left, when I could have sworn I saw one of them move its finger in a twitch. I could have jumped out of my skin with fright, and I regret to report I screamed quite loudly. I stood there staring at them for what felt like years, but was probably only minutes, as the sun hadn't moved in the sky. I convinced myself that it was likely a rat or a bird who had made their home here, and continued to analyse them. There was one propped up against the wall, sitting, another who stood with his head bowed, as if in prayer, and one who was on the other side of a wall and was leaning through a hole in it, much like the victim of a car accident might be leaning through their smashed windshield if they hadn't been wearing their seatbelt. It was this last guy who had the torch. I crept cautiously towards him, and just as I was about to take it, his head tilted upwards in a rusty motion, his whole body jerked for a couple of seconds, and then the wall around him crumbled, and he fell through onto the floor in front of me. I failed to scream this time, but I can assure you that I was more scared by this than anything else so far. Perhaps I had failed to scream due to my heart being firmly lodged within my throat, preventing any noise escaping. Perhaps it had been so sudden that I was just in shock. Or just perhaps, maybe it was the relief of the wall having crumbled at the same time, meaning that, once again, it couldn't have been the robot itself that was alive, merely that the structure of this place was so unkept that it was at risk of falling apart even further. I did know one thing at this point, however. I did not want to stay here for any longer than necessary. "Gregory, are you there?" I called out, finding my voice had not only a quality of hoarseness that gave away my fear, but also an edge of sassiness that gave away my anger with myself over that fear. I could legitimately feel tears welling up in my eyes as I realised the impossibility of the task ahead, when I heard Gregory's voice. "Cassie! Cassie! Come in, Cassie!" I failed to be able to tell where the voice was coming from, but it didn't quite sound natural, like he was speaking through a telephone or a loudspeaker. I grabbed the torch from the staff bot, flicked it on, and found that it thankfully worked, and whilst I would have liked it to have been much brighter, it would suffice. I then headed towards where the voice had come from. "Gregory, where are you?" I called out as loud as I dared. "Cassie? Cassie!" His voice came through to me again, and this time I realised that it sounded like it was coming from the ground in front of me. His voice was peculiarly coming from a small, grey, brick-sized box. Hello everyone. So I've got a fair bit of time at the end of this recording to explain more about what exactly it is I'm doing here. So this is now a first-person account of the opening few minutes of the DLC expansion to Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach Ruin. This is the second part of the demo. If you haven't seen the first part of the demo, that was the video before this. It should be underneath this video if you go to my main channel. So this is written in first person as Cassie, and I will be doing, once I've finished this audiobook adaptation of this part of the game, I will then be going back and doing the original Security Breach from the point of view of Gregory, which means everything up till this point to do with Five Nights at Freddy's is sort of outdated. But I'll be uploading this. It'll be sort of the same length every day, 1,000 words. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all tomorrow.